How to Master the Skill of Storytelling. Written and published by Transform Audiobook. Introduction. The power you didn't know you had. There is a voice inside you. A voice that can build bridges across broken hearts, mend invisible wounds, and spark revolutions in the quietest of minds. But too often, it lies buried beneath doubt, fear, and the noise of a world that has forgotten how to truly listen. Storytelling is not just an art. It is a survival tool, a key that unlocks connection, trust, and transformation. From the dawn of humanity, long before written words, stories were the way we survived. They carried wisdom across generations, kept tribes alive, and taught us who we were meant to become. Stories shaped our dreams, our fears, our faiths. Today, storytelling remains the invisible thread that binds us to each other. In business, in relationships, in leadership, in healing ourselves. Yet somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that storytelling belonged to someone else. To the gifted speakers, the natural writers, the people with louder, shinier voices. Here's the truth. Storytelling is not a gift. It is a skill that can be learned, sharpened, and mastered, no matter who you are, no matter where you start. In these pages, you will not find recycled motivational quotes or fluffy one-liners. You will step into a journey that will rebuild how you see communication itself. You will learn the psychology of storytelling, why certain words stick to the heart like glue. You will discover the emotional rhythms that turn ordinary conversations into unforgettable moments. And most importantly, you will awaken the voice within you, the one you already have, but maybe haven't trusted yet. This is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more you and making the world feel it. Along the way, I will walk you through the invisible techniques that the best communicators, leaders, and influencers have mastered, often without even knowing it. You will learn how to capture attention within the first 10 seconds, build emotional journeys that people feel, not just hear, transform vulnerability into magnetic strength, shape messages that are impossible to ignore, leave lasting impact in a world addicted to forgetting. You may be wondering, what if I'm not interesting enough? What if I don't have dramatic stories to tell? What if my voice isn't powerful? Let me ask you something. Have you ever comforted a friend? Have you ever made someone laugh? Have you ever shared a moment you couldn't forget? Then you already have everything you need. You just need to uncover it, refine it, and let it shine. The chapters ahead will not just teach you how to tell stories. They will teach you how to live a story worth telling. Are you ready to unlock the power that's been waiting inside you? Are you ready to master the skill that can change every part of your life? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The story you're already telling. Have you ever stopped to wonder? What story are you already telling? Even when you say nothing at all. You see, every moment you walk into a room, every glance you give, every word you choose or leave unspoken, you are telling a story. A story about who you are. A story about what you believe. A story about what matters most to you. And here's the hard truth. Most people are telling stories they don't even realize they're telling. Stories shaped by fear. Stories whispered by old wounds. Stories built by moments they thought they left behind. Let's pause for a moment. Look around your life. The relationships you have. The way people respond to you. The way opportunities seem to open or close. These are not accidents. They are reflections. Mirrors of the story you've been broadcasting into the world. You may be wondering, if I'm telling a story without knowing it, how can I change it? That is the very heart of mastering storytelling. You must first become the conscious author of your own narrative. Let me tell you a story. When I was 17, I thought my voice didn't matter. I was the quiet one. The one who sat in the back of the room, hoping no one would call on me. I told myself stories like, I'm not interesting enough, or, no one wants to hear what I have to say. The result? I lived it. Teachers overlooked me. Friends spoke over me. Opportunities passed me by like invisible trains I could never seem to catch. It wasn't the world silencing me. It was the story I was already telling. One afternoon, a mentor changed everything with a single question. What if the world is just agreeing with the story you're telling it? Those words hit me like a thunderclap. I realized I wasn't powerless. I was simply narrating my life with the wrong script. That's the first great secret of storytelling. You are already a storyteller. The question is, are you telling a story that lifts you, connects you, and empowers you? Or are you telling a story that keeps you small, unseen, unheard? Here's the truth. The greatest storytellers don't just craft external stories. They first rewrite the story inside themselves. They decide who they are. They decide what their life will mean. They decide the energy they bring into every room. And then, the world listens. Before we go on, if this story is opening your eyes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. It helps us reach more souls just like yours. Let's dive deeper now. The hidden narratives you carry. Most people are carrying silent narratives they never chose consciously. Maybe someone once told you, you're too sensitive, and without meaning to, you built a story that sensitivity is a weakness. Maybe someone laughed when you shared a dream, and you built a story that your dreams aren't worth speaking aloud. These hidden narratives shape how you show up in conversations, how much you trust your voice, how you connect or disconnect with others. Psychologists call this narrative identity. It's the internal autobiography we carry, a collection of experiences, emotions, and meanings that tell us who we believe we are. But here's what's beautiful. Narrative identity is not fixed. It can evolve. It can be rewritten. It can become the most powerful tool you own. Let me ask you something. If your life were a novel, what chapter would you be living right now? Are you stuck in a tragedy? Are you paused in a chapter of waiting? Or are you rising into a new beginning? Every master storyteller knows. Before you tell new stories to others, you must first reclaim the story you are living inside. The energy you bring. Words are only half the story. Energy speaks louder. When you walk into a room with the story "I'm not enough" playing silently in your mind, people feel it, even if you say nothing. When you carry the story "I have something valuable to share," even imperfect words can become powerful. Real storytelling mastery is about aligning what you say, how you say it, and what your energy communicates. There is a reason you feel moved by some speakers even when you can't remember every word they said. It's because their energy told you the truth before their words did. Here's the secret. When your energy and your story are aligned with your truth, people don't just listen. They lean in. They trust. They remember. Changing your internal story. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to create a story that isn't real. You have to find the true story. The one that your fear buried. The one that your doubt silenced. The one that your soul has been trying to tell all along. Here's a simple, powerful exercise. Sit down, take a deep breath, and complete this sentence 3 times, without thinking too hard. I am someone who blank. Don't filter it. Don't edit it. The words that come out will show you the story you are already telling yourself. If you don't like what you hear, don't panic. It's not a verdict. It's an invitation. Because anything written can be rewritten. The first rewrite. Let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer was a mid-level manager who hated public speaking. Whenever she had to give a presentation, her hands shook, her voice cracked, and her mind raced with panic. I'm terrible at speaking, she would say. It's just not who I am. But during a leadership workshop, something shifted. The facilitator asked everyone to tell a story about a time they felt proud. Jennifer hesitated. Then, she told a simple story about helping her niece overcome fear during a swimming lesson. As she spoke, something happened. Her voice became steady. Her eyes lit up. Her whole presence changed. The room leaned in. People smiled. They connected. Afterward, the facilitator pointed it out gently. You're not a bad speaker. You're just telling yourself the wrong story about speaking. That day, Jennifer rewrote her internal narrative. Instead of "I'm a terrible speaker," She began telling herself, "I am someone who connects through stories." Within a year, Jennifer was leading team-wide presentations. Within 2 years, she was speaking at national conferences. She didn't change who she was. She changed the story, and the world responded. Chapter 2: The Invisible Thread of Connection. Have you ever walked into a room full of strangers and felt instantly drawn to one person, even before a single word was spoken? There's something beneath the surface. Something invisible. Something real. It's the unseen thread of connection. The lifeline between souls. You may be wondering, what creates that instant trust, that magnetic pull, that unexplainable feeling of belonging? It's not just charisma. It's not just confidence. It's storytelling energy. Here's the truth. The greatest storytellers weave invisible threads between themselves and their listeners before the first sentence even forms. They don't just speak. They connect. And once that thread is woven, anything is possible. The biology of connection. Let's pause for a moment. This isn't just poetry. It's biology. Scientists have found that when two people truly connect, their brainwaves begin to synchronize. It's called neural coupling. When you tell a story that pulls someone in, your brain and theirs start to mirror each other. Their heart races when yours does. Their emotions rise and fall in rhythm with yours. It's like an emotional dance happening below conscious awareness. One that can only happen when there is trust. And trust begins, not with facts, not with arguments, not with perfect logic. It begins with feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling safe. The hidden language of authenticity. Authenticity is the bridge. It's what turns a stranger into an ally, a skeptic into a believer, a distant soul into a loyal heart. But here's the challenge. You can't fake authenticity. People may not know why they don't trust you. They may not be able to put it into words. But somewhere inside, they can feel it. The invisible thread only forms when you are real. Not polished to perfection. Not armored in bravado. Real. When your words match your heart. When your energy matches your intention. When your flaws are not hidden, but humanized. That's when the thread tightens. That's when connection becomes inevitable. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly connected to someone? What made that moment different? It wasn't their perfect speech. It wasn't their impressive vocabulary. It was the feeling that they let you see their truth. And in doing so, they gave you permission to see your own. The first step toward weaving connection. You don't have to be brilliant to connect. You don't have to be flawless. You don't have to be loud. You have to be willing. Willing to be present. Willing to listen with your whole being. Willing to speak from your real experience, not just your rehearsed mind. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. The next time you speak to someone, even casually, silently ask yourself, what is the story behind their eyes? Not the story they show the world. The real one. The one waiting beneath the surface. When you begin to wonder about someone else's inner world, your presence changes. Your words soften. Your energy opens. And without even trying, you begin weaving the invisible thread. Before the words come. The thread is often woven before a single word is spoken. It happens when you make eye contact with warmth. You smile with genuine presence. You lean in, not out. You listen with your whole body. Storytelling doesn't start with speaking. It starts with seeing. It starts with feeling. It starts with opening yourself first. If you are armored, guarded, or trying to impress, the thread will never form. But if you are curious, open, and willing to share from your authentic self, the thread will weave itself. Before we continue, if you're feeling a deeper pull inside you right now, if these words are helping you uncover a truth you've always felt but couldn't name, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Someone out there needs to hear this just like you did. Now, let's go even deeper. The story beneath every story. Every person you meet carries a story beneath the story they tell. The coworker who brags too much? Maybe underneath is a story of longing to be seen. The friend who withdraws when things get hard? Maybe underneath is a story of early betrayal. The stranger who offers you unexpected kindness? Maybe underneath is a story of redemption you'll never know. Great storytellers don't just tell their stories. They understand everyone carries one. When you tell a story that touches the hidden stories in others, you unlock something sacred. You show them they are not alone. You show them they are understood without judgment. You show them there is hope, even in the unseen places. Weaving threads across time. Storytelling is not about performance. It's about resonance. It's about creating echoes inside another person's heart. Echoes that say, "You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are part of something greater." And those echoes do not fade quickly. They can last for years. Sometimes a lifetime. That's why the invisible thread matters more than any clever line or perfect delivery. Without connection, your story is just noise. With connection, your story becomes a bridge. Chapter 3. Why Stories Stick. The Psychology Behind Impact. Let me ask you something. Why do some stories stay with us forever, while others vanish almost the moment they're told? Why can a few simple words create memories that last a lifetime, while long, complicated speeches drift away like dust? The answer isn't magic. It's psychology. And it's something every master storyteller must understand. Stories that stick don't just inform us. They transform us. They don't just pass through our minds. They reshape the emotional architecture of our hearts. Here's the truth. A story that impacts is not a story that shouts the loudest. It's a story that touches the deepest. Let's explore how. The brain is wired for story. Long before we had textbooks or lectures, we had stories. Our ancestors didn't sit around fires reading bullet points. They told tales of survival, love, loss, victory, and wisdom. And our brains evolved to crave these patterns. When we hear a story, several powerful things happen inside us. The language processing parts of our brain light up. The sensory areas, taste, touch, sight, begin to activate. Our mirror neurons fire, allowing us to feel as if we are living the story ourselves. In fact, studies show that a well-told story can trigger the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, in listeners. Oxytocin makes people feel empathy. It builds trust. It makes listeners more generous, open, and emotionally connected. Think about that. A story isn't just words. It's a chemical experience. Stories that stick hit 4 emotional cores. You may be wondering, what exactly makes a story unforgettable? There are 4 emotional triggers that make stories stick. Relatability, emotional contrast, tension and release, a meaningful resolution. Let's break them down. Relatability, I see myself in you. We remember stories that mirror our own fears, hopes, dreams, and struggles. When a story echoes a part of our own lives, even if it's small, it becomes personal. And what is personal is unforgettable. Here's a truth few realize. People don't remember stories because they're impressed. They remember stories because they're included. The moment a listener silently says, "That's me," you've won their heart. The emotional contrast, peaks and valleys. A flatline story, one emotion, one tone, one rhythm, fades quickly. But when a story takes listeners on an emotional journey, when it shifts from hope to fear, from sadness to triumph, it becomes an experience. Contrast creates memory. Think of it like colors in a painting. Without dark, the light would not shine. Without pain, joy would feel flat. When you craft emotional contrast, real contrast, you create unforgettable moments. Tension and release, the glue of curiosity. Have you ever stayed up too late just to finish a story? That's tension at work. Tension is the invisible hand that keeps listeners leaning in, needing to know what happens next. It can be a mystery, a question, an unfulfilled hope, an unsolved problem. Whatever it is, once tension is built, the brain needs a release. When a storyteller masterfully builds tension and then satisfies it, The emotional payoff creates a spike in dopamine, the reward chemical. This is why we say a story is satisfying. It doesn't just fill our mind. It rewards our brain. Meaningful resolution, more than just an ending. A story that sticks doesn't just stop. It lands. There is a feeling of arrival, of closure, of deeper understanding. And not just about the characters or the plot. About ourselves. The best stories leave listeners feeling that their own life just gained a new piece of wisdom. A new lens. A new seed planted inside them. The story doesn't end when the storyteller stops speaking. It lives on, growing, unfolding, resonating. That's the magic. And that's the craft. The psychology of self-insertion. Here's another hidden truth. Listeners insert themselves into your story. When you tell a story of courage, they remember the times they felt brave, or wish they had been. When you tell a story of heartbreak, they relive their own losses. When you share a story of redemption, they find hope for their own second chances. This is called self-insertion, and it's a secret lever that makes stories unforgettable. You are not just telling your story. You are awakening their story inside them. And when someone's own identity becomes intertwined with your narrative, it becomes impossible to forget. Before we continue, if this journey is awakening new insights inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. It helps this message reach others who need it just like you did. Let's go deeper. Vulnerability, the deepest impact. You may be wondering, is it better to tell polished success stories? The answer is no. Perfect stories are forgettable. Polished perfection feels unattainable, distant, sterile. But when you share a scar, not just a trophy. When you share the parts of the journey that hurt, confused, or humbled you, that's when listeners lean closer. Because we are wired for authentic connection, not admiration. The more real you are, the more memorable you become. Real pain, real hope, real humanity. That's the unforgettable blueprint. The myth of epic stories. Many people think their stories aren't big enough to matter. They think they need a story about saving a life, climbing Mount Everest, or surviving a massive crisis. But the truth is, the smallest, quietest stories often hold the greatest power. A story about a child's small act of kindness. A story about a decision made in the dark. A story about getting up one more time when you wanted to stay down. What matters is not the scale of the story. It's the emotional resonance. If it moved you, it can move others. If it changed you, it can change others. Never underestimate the sacredness of small stories. Building impactful stories, a simple framework. Here's a simple structure that many great storytellers use, often without even realizing it. Set the scene. Create a vivid place and emotional atmosphere. Introduce the conflict. What was at stake? What tension was rising? Show the emotional journey. Feelings, doubts, hopes, struggles. Deliver the transformation. How did things change? How did you change? Offer a universal takeaway. What deeper truth can the listener carry into their own life? This rhythm mirrors how the brain craves stories, from curiosity to catharsis. It's not a rigid formula. It's an emotional dance. And when done authentically, it creates stories that live forever. Chapter 4, the first 10 seconds, seizing attention. Imagine this. You have a room full of people. They're checking their phones. They're thinking about their next meeting. They're half listening, half drifting. And then you begin to speak. And in 10 seconds, the air changes. Heads lift. Eyes lock onto you. The room breathes with you. It's not magic. It's not chance. It's the art of the first 10 seconds. You may be wondering, why are the first 10 seconds so important? Because the human brain is wired for survival, not courtesy. In every new interaction, the brain asks 3 silent questions. Am I safe? Is this interesting? Is this worth my attention? If you don't answer those questions quickly, you lose them. Not because they're rude. Because they're human. Here's the truth. In storytelling, you are not competing against boredom. You are competing against biology. First impressions, written in the brain. Neuroscientists have found that first impressions are formed in less than 7 seconds. Some research even suggests it happens in 1/10 of a second, before you finish your first full sentence. Your listener's brain has already started writing a judgment. It's not about being fair. It's about being efficient. The brain categorizes quickly to save energy for real threats and real rewards. That means if you want to master storytelling, you must master the first 10 seconds. You must become unforgettable, fast. The elements of a magnetic opening. There are 3 powerful ways to seize attention instantly. A start with curiosity. A start with emotion. A start with surprise. Let's break them down. Start with curiosity. Curiosity is a hunger wired into the human mind. It's why we can't resist clicking on unanswered questions. It's why cliffhanger torture us into staying up late. When you open with a question, an unexpected fact, or a vivid mystery, you ignite the brain's natural need to seek resolution. Example: what if everything you believe about fear is wrong? In just a few words, you have triggered a cognitive itch that demands scratching. Start with emotion. Emotion is the glue that binds memory. When you open with something deeply emotional, joy, anger, fear, awe, you bypass rational defenses. You don't have to be dramatic. You have to be real. Example: the last time I saw my father, I didn't know it would be goodbye. Instantly, the listener's heart leans forward. They feel the gravity of the moment. They need to know more. Start with surprise. Surprise shocks the brain out of autopilot. In a world saturated with predictable content, surprise is oxygen. Example: most people think resilience is about being tough. But real resilience is about being soft. The mind jolts awake. Wait, what? Tell me more. Surprise opens the door. Curiosity keeps them inside. The dangerous trap, starting with "about me." Let's pause for a moment. One of the most common mistakes storytellers make is beginning with self-centered introductions. Hi, my name is. Today I'm going to talk about. Before I begin, let me tell you my background. The listener's brain, craving connection and meaning, hears this and checks out. Because in truth, people don't care about your background, yet. They care about whether you will bring value to their story. Until you connect emotionally, your resume doesn't matter. Here's the rule. Connect first. Credentials second. Your story must become their story. From your very first breath. You must make them feel that this story matters to them. Even if you're telling your own experience, it must echo something universal. Fear, love, hope, loss, joy, redemption. When they recognize themselves in your opening, you have them. And once you have them, you can take them anywhere. The power of the visual opening. Here's another secret weapon. The brain processes visuals 60,000 times faster than text. When you begin with a visual scene, you instantly engage the sensory imagination. Example: picture a small, cracked sidewalk under a blazing afternoon sun. A boy in a red hoodie stands alone, gripping a tattered notebook. In seconds, you have painted a world. And worlds are harder to walk away from than words. Visual openings are like emotional trapdoors. Once the mind falls in, it cannot climb out easily. Before we continue, if these lessons are sparking ideas inside you, if you're starting to feel how powerful your own voice could become, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. It helps us reach more hearts ready to awaken. Now, let's unlock even more. Practice crafting your first 10 seconds. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. Choose a story you want to tell. Then write 3 different openings. A one that sparks curiosity. A one that triggers emotion. A one that creates a vivid visual. Test them. Feel them. Read them aloud. Notice which one makes you lean forward as you listen. Notice which one gives you goosebumps. That's the one. That's your doorway. The courage to begin. There's a hidden fear behind opening moments. What if I'm not interesting enough? Here's the truth. You are not trying to impress. You are trying to connect. And human connection doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. The first 10 seconds aren't about proving yourself. They are about opening yourself. When you open with authenticity, curiosity, or emotion, you tap into something timeless. You awaken the part of your listener that is still hungry for real connection. And that hunger, once awakened, will follow you wherever you lead. Chapter 5. Building emotional journeys that move people. Think about the last time a story truly moved you. Not just entertained you, but changed something inside you. A story that left you quiet, reflective, maybe even a little different afterward. That's the power of an emotional journey. You see, great storytelling isn't about dazzling people with fancy words. It's about taking them somewhere emotionally. It's about building a bridge between where they are and where you want to guide them. Without an emotional journey, even the most exciting plot fades into noise. With an emotional journey, even the simplest moment becomes unforgettable. You may be wondering, how do you build an emotional journey people can actually feel? Let's walk through it together. The emotional arc, the heartbeat of every great story. Every powerful story, whether it's a 2-minute speech or a 3-hour movie, follows an invisible emotional arc. It mirrors the emotional rhythms of real life. Hope, a struggle, a doubt, a breakthrough, transformation. It's not a straight line. It's a living, breathing rise and fall. Here's the truth. Emotion is movement. Without movement, there is no life. Without emotional shifts, there is no memorable story. Let's pause for a moment. Think about a song you love. It doesn't stay on one note, does it? It rises, it falls, it soars, it aches. Stories are the same. Flat stories, stories with only one emotion, feel safe but forgettable. Dynamic stories, stories that move through highs and lows, create memory. Start with an anchor emotion. Every emotional journey needs a starting point, a home base. Ask yourself, what emotion am I starting with? Is it excitement? Is it fear? Is it longing? Is it hope? Name it clearly. The clearer you are about your anchor emotion, the stronger your audience will feel grounded at the beginning. Example: if you start a story with a feeling of innocent hope, the listener relaxes into that emotional space with you. They prepare, even unconsciously, for the journey ahead. Anchor first, then journey. Introduce tension, the emotional hook. After anchoring the audience emotionally, you must introduce tension. Tension is the emotional rubber band that stretches the heart. It creates anticipation. It makes listeners need to know what happens next. Tension can come from a challenge faced, a threat looming, a dream slipping away, a choice that must be made. Without tension, there is no journey, only description. Tension doesn't have to be dramatic or life-threatening. It just has to matter emotionally. The more the audience cares about the stakes, the deeper they follow you. Let the audience feel the struggle. This is where many storytellers go wrong. They rush. They want to get to the happy ending. They skip over the messy, uncomfortable middle. But here's the truth. The struggle is sacred. The struggle is where the audience leans in. The struggle is where trust is built. The struggle is where transformation feels real. If you smooth over your challenges, you steal the audience's chance to feel with you. Instead, let them walk the valley with you. Let them feel the weight of uncertainty. Let them taste the fear, the doubt, the aching hope. Because when you bring them into the depth of the struggle, they will rise with you in the breakthrough. Create a moment of breakthrough. Every emotional journey needs a moment where the clouds part, where a shift happens, where hope begins to win. It doesn't have to be a perfect victory. It just has to be real. Breakthrough moments are powerful because they mirror the moments we all crave in our own lives. When you give the audience a glimpse of light after darkness, you give them more than entertainment. You give them hope. And hope is unforgettable. Land with a transformation. Finally, end your emotional journey with clear transformation. What changed? What did you learn? How did you grow? How are you different now? Without transformation, stories feel hollow. With transformation, stories feel earned. People don't remember every word you say. They remember how your story made them feel about themselves. They remember the emotional journey they took because of you. And if you guide them skillfully, they don't just remember your story. They carry it inside them. Before we continue, if this chapter is helping you see storytelling in a new light, if it's giving you tools you've been searching for, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. It helps us bring storytelling mastery to more hearts around the world. Now, let's dive even deeper. The power of emotional contrast. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth going deeper now. Contrast is emotional dynamite. Imagine a speaker who tells a funny, light-hearted story, and then shifts into a moment of profound vulnerability. The sudden shift jolts the audience awake. It makes the emotional impact 10 times stronger. Contrast sharpens feeling. It's the reason a candle seems brightest in the dark. It's the reason a single tear after laughter breaks us open. When you master emotional contrast, when you move skillfully between emotions, you create unforgettable journeys. Story is breath, rising and falling. Great storytelling is like breathing. Inhale, hope, tension, excitement. Exhale, breakthrough, release, meaning. It's a rhythm. It's a dance. If you stay too long in tension without relief, the audience suffocates. If you relieve tension too early, the story loses power. Breathe with them. Feel the emotional pacing. Rise when the heart needs to soar. Fall when the heart needs to weep. Your voice becomes a guide through the sacred landscapes of the soul. And when the story ends, they won't just remember what you said. They'll remember how it felt to breathe with you. A simple blueprint for building emotional journeys. Here's a framework you can use to design emotional arcs. Anchor. Start with a clear emotion. Introduce tension. Raise emotional stakes. Deepen struggle. Let the struggle feel real. Breakthrough. Create emotional lift. Transformation. Show how change happens. It's not a rigid formula. It's a living heartbeat. Trust it. Feel it. Shape it with care. Chapter 6. The Power of Vulnerability. Telling the Unvarnished Truth. There's a moment in every great story. A moment when the mask falls. A moment when the armor cracks. A moment when truth steps out, raw and trembling. That moment is vulnerability. And it is the soul of unforgettable storytelling. You may be wondering, isn't vulnerability risky? Won't people judge me? Won't it make me look weak? Here's the truth. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage in its purest form. It is strength without disguise. And it is the secret doorway to deep, lasting connection. Why vulnerability works. Let's pause for a moment. Think about a person you admire deeply. Someone you trust. Someone whose words stay with you. What made them memorable? Was it their perfection? Or was it their realness? We are drawn to people who let us see the cracks, the scars, the unfinished, still struggling parts. Because in seeing their humanity, we find permission to embrace our own. When you share the polished version of your story, people admire you. When you share the vulnerable version, people join you. Admiration is distant. Connection is close. Vulnerability closes the distance. The biology of vulnerability. There's real science behind this. Studies show that when someone shares something vulnerable, a fear, a failure, a hidden hope, listeners experience a surge of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Oxytocin increases trust. It lowers fear responses. It builds emotional bridges across the spaces between us. This means vulnerability is not just a feeling. It's a biological invitation to trust. Here's the secret. When you tell a story with vulnerability, you are not just speaking to minds. You are speaking to hearts at the chemical level. What vulnerability is, and is not. Vulnerability is not confessing everything to everyone. It is not dumping unprocessed pain onto others. It is not seeking pity. True vulnerability is chosen authenticity. It is the willingness to be seen. It is the courage to tell the unvarnished truth, even when you could have hidden behind safer words. It's saying, "This was hard for me. I didn't have it all figured out. I was afraid, and I acted anyway." Not from a place of collapse, but from a place of clarity and courage. The vulnerability gap. There's a gap most storytellers fear to cross. The gap between the story they want to tell, the cleaned-up version, and the story they need to tell, the raw, real version. Crossing that gap feels terrifying, because it means risking judgment, risking misunderstanding, risking being seen not just as impressive, but as human. But here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you dare to cross the gap, you become magnetic, because vulnerability is rare, and what is rare becomes priceless. Let me tell you a story. There was a time early in my career when I gave a speech that bombed. I had rehearsed for weeks. I had crafted every sentence carefully. I had polished the words until they gleamed. But when I spoke, the audience's eyes glazed over. They nodded politely. They clapped half-heartedly. Afterward, I felt crushed. I asked a mentor what had gone wrong. He smiled gently and said, "You gave them your perfection, but you didn't give them your heart." Those words hit like a lightning strike. In trying to impress them, I had hidden the parts of my story that mattered most. The doubts, the fears, the failures, the very things that would have made me real to them. From that day on, I made a decision. No more hiding behind polish. No more sanding down my soul for approval. I would tell the unvarnished truth, and trust that real connection was worth the risk. How to share vulnerably without oversharing. You may be wondering, how do I know what's appropriate to share? Here's a simple guide. A share from scars, not wounds. A share what serves the story, not what seeks therapy. A share to connect, not to confess. When you share from a healed place, even if the memory still aches, you offer hope. When you share to connect, not to be rescued, you offer strength. Always ask yourself, is this vulnerability serving the listener's journey, not just my own? If the answer is yes, you are on sacred ground. Vulnerability makes stories stick. People don't remember flawless heroes. They remember broken ones who kept walking. They remember the woman who got back up after failing. They remember the man who admitted he was afraid but stepped forward anyway. They remember the child who dreamed even when the world said no. Vulnerability plants seeds in the heart. Seeds of courage. Seeds of compassion. Seeds of belief. When you tell stories from that raw, honest place, you don't just tell a story. You awaken something in the soul of the listener. Practical tips for sharing vulnerability. Here's how to share vulnerably in your stories. A name the real emotion. A resist the urge to soften or justify it. A let silence breathe after heavy moments. A speak simply. Avoid dramatizing or exaggerating. A offer a hopeful frame. Show how the experience shaped you, not just how it hurt. Vulnerability plus hope is an unstoppable force. It says to the listener, you can walk through your darkness too, and you can rise. Before we move on, let's pause for a moment. If this chapter has stirred something in you, if you are realizing that your own real, imperfect story has power beyond what you thought, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Someone out there is waiting for a voice just like yours to show them they are not alone. Now, let's keep going. Chapter 7. The Language of the Heart, Speaking Beyond Words. Have you ever heard someone speak? And even though their words were perfect, something felt missing? A hollowness you couldn't explain. A silence between the lines that left you untouched. And then, have you ever heard someone else fumble through imperfect words, stumble through rough edges, yet leave you moved, shaken, transformed? That is the difference between speaking to the mind and speaking to the heart. Words are tools, but emotion is the messenger. When you master the language of the heart, you become unforgettable. Words are only the surface. Let's pause for a moment. Most people focus entirely on the words they say, choosing them carefully, polishing them endlessly, believing that perfect phrasing will win attention and admiration. But here's the truth. Words are only the surface. What lives underneath is what truly matters. It's the intention. It's the emotion. It's the invisible energy carried on every syllable. People don't just hear your words. They feel your presence. They feel your sincerity. They feel your fear. They feel your hope. And long after they forget your exact words, they remember the feeling you left behind. Emotional transmission, the real storytelling. Neuroscientists have discovered something fascinating. Human communication is only about 7% words. The other 93% is tone, facial expression, body language, and emotional energy. This means, when you speak, your listeners are receiving a flood of information that goes far beyond language. They are reading your face. They are sensing your energy. They are absorbing your emotional state. You may be wondering, how do I master this unseen communication? It begins with inner alignment. When your words, emotions, and intentions align, you become a transmitter of truth. And truth has a frequency that hearts recognize instantly. Authentic emotion is contagious. There's a reason you feel calm when someone truly calm speaks to you. There's a reason you feel energized when someone full of passion enters the room. Emotion is contagious. It leaps from speaker to listener invisibly. It echoes across the space between you. If you speak about joy while carrying hidden bitterness, the audience feels the bitterness. If you speak about hope while carrying true hope inside you, the audience drinks it in without even knowing why. Your emotional state leaks into every story you tell. The secret is not to fake emotion. It is to cultivate it honestly inside yourself before you speak. Speaking through silence. Sometimes, the most powerful moments in storytelling are not spoken at all. They live in the pauses, the hesitations, the breath between thoughts. Silence, when held with presence, speaks volumes. A well-placed pause can say, "This matters. Feel this with me. Something sacred is happening." Don't be afraid of silence. Let it breathe. Let it deepen. When you are comfortable in silence, you invite your listeners to step into the space with you. And in that space, transformation happens. The power of presence. Presence is the invisible music behind every great story. It's the difference between speaking at people and speaking with them. Presence means being fully here, not thinking about the next line, not worrying about being perfect, not chasing approval. It's standing inside your story completely and inviting others to join you there. When you are fully present, your listeners feel safe to be present too. Presence says without words, "I am here with you. You matter. We are walking this journey together." And that is the language of the heart. Practical ways to speak beyond words. Here are ways you can strengthen your invisible communication. Practice emotional alignment before speaking. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Slow down your pace. Let emotion breathe. Allow natural facial expressions. Don't force them. Make warm, real eye contact, not mechanical scanning. Let your hands move naturally. Gestures rooted in genuine feeling, not performance. Authenticity lives in the small details. The unscripted moments. The spaces between the words. The more you trust your presence, the more powerful your storytelling becomes. A story without words. Let me tell you about Gabriel. Gabriel was a quiet man. He didn't have the booming voice of a stage performer. He didn't memorize perfect speeches. But when Gabriel told stories, rooms fell silent. It wasn't the cleverness of his language. It was the rawness of his heart. Sometimes he would pause mid-sentence, searching for the right word. Sometimes he would close his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of a memory. And in those moments, something electric would pass through the room. People would cry. People would laugh. People would remember. Gabriel showed me something priceless. It's not the smoothness of your words that moves people. It's the depth of your feeling behind them. Before we move on, let's pause for a moment. If you're beginning to feel that storytelling is more about being real than being perfect, if you're realizing you already have everything you need inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. There are others searching for this truth, and your support helps us reach them. Now, let's continue this journey. Chapter 8, Visual Words, Painting Pictures in the Mind. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about the most powerful story you ever heard. Chances are, you don't just remember the words. You remember the images it created. The faces, the places, the tiny details that made it feel real. Great storytelling is not just heard. It's seen. It paints pictures so vivid, so textured, that the listener steps inside the story and lives it. You may be wondering, how do I create that kind of vividness with only words? The answer lies in mastering the art of visual storytelling. Let's walk into that world together. Why visual imagery matters. The human brain is wired for images. Nearly 50% of the brain's resources are dedicated to visual processing. We are built to think in pictures. When you tell a story with strong visual imagery, you're not just entertaining. You're activating powerful regions of the brain that light up as if the listener is experiencing the story firsthand. This is called neural mirroring. It's why a description of biting into a crisp apple can make your mouth water. It's why a story of a cold night can make you shiver. Visual storytelling is not a luxury. It's the doorway into immersion. The 3 keys to painting with words. There are 3 simple but powerful tools to create vivid mental pictures. Sensory details. Specificity. Emotional layering. Let's explore each one. Sensory details. Engage the 5 senses. Don't just tell the listener what happened. Show them through the senses. Ask yourself, what did it look like? What did it sound like? What did it smell like? What did it feel like to the touch? What did it taste like? The more senses you engage, the deeper the listener falls into the story. Example. Instead of saying, "It was a rainy night," you might say, "Raindrops hammered the tin roof like 1,000 tiny fists, the smell of wet earth rising with every gust of wind." Instantly, the listener steps into that moment. They feel it. They live it. Specificity. Make it personal. Make it real. Vagueness is the enemy of immersion. The more specific your details, the more universal the connection becomes. Example. Instead of saying, "He had a dog," say, "A scruffy golden retriever named Max, with one ear that flopped sideways no matter how many times he shook it." Specificity creates texture. Texture creates memory. When you describe small, vivid details, the story anchors itself inside the listener's mind. It stops being a story. It becomes a place. Emotional layering. Tie details to feelings. Details without emotion are just decoration. But when you weave emotional meaning into your descriptions, the imagery becomes alive. Example. Instead of describing a setting sun simply by color, you might say, "The sun melted into the ocean like a tired traveler finally finding home." The visual detail is enriched by emotional resonance. It means something, and when it means something, it sticks. The secret power of movement. Another overlooked tool in visual storytelling is movement. Static scenes are harder to imagine. Dynamic scenes pull the listener inside. Describe movement. The sway of tree branches. The shuffle of tired feet. The glint of light across a turning page. Movement creates a cinematic feeling. It transforms still images into living experiences. When you add motion to your descriptions, you animate the story inside the listener's mind. A story painted in the mind. Let me tell you about Ella. Ella was a young woman who wanted to share her story of surviving cancer. She had powerful experiences, but at first, her storytelling fell flat. She spoke in generalities. It was hard. It was painful. It was a long journey. The words were true, but they didn't create pictures. They didn't bring the listener inside her world. With guidance, Ella learned to weave sensory and emotional details into her storytelling. She began to say things like, "The chemotherapy room always smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. The chairs creaked under the weight of exhausted bodies. I remember tracing the cracks on the ceiling tiles to keep from crying." Now, listeners didn't just hear her story. They lived it. They sat in that chair with her. They smelled the air. They felt the fragile hope woven into each crack of the ceiling. And her impact changed forever. Because when you paint pictures in the mind, you paint memories in the heart. Before we move on, let's pause for a moment. If you're starting to see how powerful even the smallest details can be, if you're feeling the spark of new images waiting inside your own stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Your support helps us spread the art of storytelling to every heart ready to awaken it. Now, let's go even deeper. Practical ways to strengthen your visual storytelling. Here's a simple practice to sharpen your skills. Choose a memory. Close your eyes and relive it through the 5 senses. Write down every sensory detail you can recall: colors, smells, sounds, textures. Then, add the emotions you felt during those sensory moments. This exercise will train your mind to tell stories that feel lived, not just narrated. The more you practice seeing through your senses, the more naturally your storytelling will bloom into vivid, unforgettable scenes. Chapter 9: Rhythm, Breath, and Silence, the hidden music of storytelling. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about your favorite song. Not the words, not the melody, but the feeling it gives you. Now imagine storytelling as a kind of music. A rhythm played not on instruments, but inside the human heart. Because the truth is, every powerful story has a rhythm. Every unforgettable moment has a breath. Every transformational moment has a silence that echoes louder than words. You may be wondering, how do I find the rhythm of my story? Let's walk into the invisible music together. Storytelling is not just words, it's flow. Let's pause for a moment. Most beginning storytellers focus on content. They focus on what to say, on getting the facts right, on remembering the next point. But master storytellers move differently. They focus not just on what they say, but how it feels as it unfolds. They understand that storytelling is like a river. It needs to flow. It needs to breathe. It needs to rise, fall, pause, and rush. Without rhythm, even beautiful words feel exhausting. With rhythm, even simple words become spellbinding. The power of pace. Pace is the speed of your storytelling, and pace controls emotion. When you slow down, you create gravity. When you speed up, you create urgency. Imagine a storyteller racing through a profound moment. The audience feels rushed, disconnected, cheated of the depth. Now imagine a storyteller who slows down in a sacred moment. Their voice softens. Their breathing deepens. The room leans in. Mastering pace is about feeling the emotional heartbeat of your story and letting your words match it. When it's time for excitement, let the words dance. When it's time for sorrow, let the words linger. Breath, the pulse of presence. Breath is the invisible pulse of storytelling. A shallow breath creates tension, nervousness. A deep, steady breath creates calm, connection. When you breathe consciously as you tell a story, you guide not just your own presence, but the emotional state of your listeners. They mirror you. They ride the waves of your breath without even realizing it. Breath is permission. Breath is grounding. Breath is the unspoken invitation that says, "We are safe here. We can feel this together." Never underestimate the silent power of your breathing. Silence, the loudest sound. There is a kind of silence that shouts louder than any word. It's the silence after a painful confession. The silence before a revelation. The silence after a moment of shared laughter, when hearts are wide open. Silence, held with courage and presence, becomes sacred space. Most people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill it. They fear being judged, misunderstood, abandoned. But silence, when held wisely, is not empty. It is full. full of trust, full of meaning, full of invisible threads weaving soul to soul. How to use silence powerfully. Here's how you can use silence like a master storyteller. After a powerful sentence, pause and let it breathe. Before revealing a key emotional moment, let silence build anticipation. When emotions rise, let silence hold the weight. Silence allows the listener to process, to feel, to complete the emotional journey inside themselves. Without silence, a story becomes noise. With silence, a story becomes an experience. Rhythm lives in contrast. Rhythm is not just about speed or slowness. It's about contrast. The tension between fast and slow, between loud and soft, between speaking and breathing. Just like music needs quiet notes to make loud notes powerful, storytelling needs emotional variation to create impact. Imagine a story told all at one speed, one tone, one emotion. It becomes flat, predictable, forgettable. But when you shape your story like a symphony, building, releasing, rising, falling, you create a journey the heart cannot resist. A story shaped by rhythm. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was a corporate trainer, brilliant with ideas but struggling to hold attention. His sessions were packed with useful information. But listeners drifted. They nodded politely but forgot quickly. When Marcus learned about the hidden rhythm of storytelling, everything changed. He began to vary his pace. He allowed moments of breath. He dared to let silence hold after emotional truths. And something miraculous happened. People leaned in. They wrote him letters months later saying they still remembered his stories. Not because of the facts, but because of how they felt. Marcus had learned to play the invisible music. And once you hear it, once you feel it, you can never go back. Practical ways to strengthen your storytelling rhythm. Here's how you can practice. Record yourself telling a story. Listen for moments that feel rushed or flat. Practice slowing down key emotional points. Insert intentional pauses after major emotional beats. Breathe deeply and consciously as you narrate. Feel the heartbeat of your own story. Let it guide you. Over time, rhythm will become instinctive. As natural as breathing. As essential as feeling. You are not just learning to tell stories. You are learning to awaken emotions that last forever. Now, let's continue. Chapter 10. Crafting Climaxes and Emotional Payoffs. Every story is a journey. But every journey must have a peak. A moment when the air thins. The heart pounds. The world tilts just a little. This is the climax. The point where everything you've built, every emotion, every tension, every rising note, reaches its crescendo. You may be wondering, how do I create that kind of emotional high? How do I craft a moment that lives in someone's heart long after the story ends? The answer lies in understanding the anatomy of emotional payoff. Let's walk there together. Why climaxes matter. Without a climax, a story feels unfinished, unresolved, like a song that fades out before the final chord. The human heart craves completion. We long for emotional resolution. A climax provides that. It delivers the feeling of arrival after a long, emotional journey. And when done right, it brands your story into the listener's memory forever. The emotional build-up. Let's pause for a moment. Climaxes are only powerful because of the journey that precedes them. Without build-up, a climax feels cheap, unearned. It becomes noise instead of meaning. Think of it like climbing a mountain. The beauty of the summit is magnified by the exhaustion of the climb. The struggle makes the view sacred. In storytelling, emotional build-up is about carefully layering. A rising tension. A deepening emotional stakes. Increasing anticipation. You stretch the emotional rubber band until the listener can barely stand the tension. And then, at the right moment, you release it. The release, giving the heart what it needs. Release is not just about resolution. It's about emotional satisfaction. You must deliver a moment that feels true, earned, meaningful. The listener must feel that everything they felt along the way mattered. That the tears, the laughter, the doubts were leading somewhere profound. Release can look different depending on the story. A hard-won victory, or a painful but honest loss, or a revelation that changes everything. What matters is not that the climax is happy or sad. What matters is that it feels real. Authenticity beats perfection every time. Common mistakes in crafting climaxes. You may be wondering, what are the pitfalls I should avoid? Here are 3 common mistakes. Rushing the climax. Not building enough tension beforehand. Over-dramatizing the climax. Making it feel forced or unbelievable. Missing emotional clarity. Leaving listeners confused about what they should feel. A great climax feels inevitable but surprising. You didn't see it coming exactly. But when it comes, it feels like it couldn't have been any other way. That's the magic you're aiming for. A story with a true climax. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah told the story of losing her brother in a car accident. For years, when she tried to share it, the story fell flat. It felt heavy, but not transformational. She realized she was focusing only on the facts. The crash, the funeral, the grief. But she was missing the emotional peak. After deep reflection, she found the real climax. It wasn't the day her brother died. It was the day, years later, when she finally forgave herself for surviving. When Sarah told that story, the real emotional summit, audiences wept. They stood in silence afterward. They hugged her without words. Because the true climax wasn't about death. It was about life. About redemption. About healing. That is the power of finding your real emotional payoff. The anatomy of an emotional climax. Here's a simple framework to craft your emotional summit. Build the tension slowly. Let stakes rise. Deepen emotional vulnerability. Show struggle. Reach the emotional breaking point. Let tension peak. Deliver the moment of shift. A decision, realization, or irreversible change. Offer emotional clarity. Let the listener feel completion. It's not about formulas. It's about feeling the emotional gravity and honoring it with your words. Let the climax rise naturally from the emotional truth you're telling. Practical exercise, building your climax. Choose a story you want to tell. Map it simply. What tension rises through the story? What is the emotional peak? What changes after the climax? Then practice telling the story aloud. Slowly. Feeling the emotional rise. Letting yourself lean fully into the release. Feel your own heart move as you tell it. If your heart moves, their hearts will too. Chapter 11. Storytelling in Conversations, Everyday Magic. When we think of storytelling, we often imagine big stages, spotlights, auditoriums full of silent listeners. But the truth is, storytelling lives in the small moments. The coffee shop conversations, the late-night talks, the smiles exchanged between sentences. You may be wondering, can storytelling really change my everyday life? The answer is yes. Because when you weave stories into your daily conversations, you don't just communicate. You connect. You build bridges. You spark change. You create small moments that linger long after the words are gone. Let's walk into that magic together. The power of story in everyday life. Let's pause for a moment. Every day, you are given invisible opportunities. Opportunities to make someone feel seen. Opportunities to turn a dry conversation into something unforgettable. Opportunities to transform routine moments into meaningful ones. Storytelling is not just a performance skill. It's a connection skill. It's about speaking heart to heart, not role to role. When you master everyday storytelling, you move differently in the world. You leave trails of light behind you wherever you go. Why storytelling works in conversations. The brain is wired to love stories more than facts, more than advice, more than arguments. When you tell a story, you invite the listener to lower their defenses, to stop evaluating, to start experiencing. Stories create emotional safety. They open doors logic alone cannot unlock. In a conversation, stories allow you to A share ideas without preaching. A build trust without pushing. A create impact without needing permission. A good story bypasses resistance. It goes straight to the heart. How to weave stories naturally. You may be wondering, how do I tell stories in everyday conversations without sounding rehearsed or awkward? Here's the secret. You don't announce a story. You invite it. Instead of saying, "Let me tell you a story," you flow into it naturally. You might say, "That reminds me of something that happened once. You know, that makes me think about when Funny thing, I once experienced something similar." You shift seamlessly from conversation into story. And because it feels natural, it feels genuine, the listener leans in without even realizing it. Storytelling moments are everywhere. Opportunities to weave stories appear in everyday moments like a giving advice to a friend, encouraging a struggling teammate, a breaking the ice in a new social setting, a teaching a lesson without sounding like a teacher, a comforting someone going through pain. Instead of saying, "You should do this," you tell a story about a time you faced a similar choice. Instead of saying, "Everything will be fine," you share a story about a time you found light in the darkness. And suddenly, your words don't just advise. They transform. Keep it short. Keep it sharp. In conversation, storytelling must be lean, precise, alive. You're not giving a TED Talk. You're planting seeds. Aim for stories that are a one scene, a one emotion, one clear takeaway. Think of it like a spark, not a bonfire. Enough to warm the heart. Enough to ignite connection. A story that changed a friendship. Let me tell you about Nathan. Nathan had a colleague he didn't get along with. They clashed at meetings. They misunderstood each other's intentions. One afternoon, during a coffee break, Nathan shared a simple story. A story about a mistake he made early in his career. A mistake that humbled him. That made him slower to judge others. He didn't preach. He didn't accuse. He just told his story. Something shifted. The colleague's defenses dropped. He smiled, nodded, shared a mistake of his own. That coffee break turned into a bridge. And months later, they became one of the strongest teams in the company. Not because of a grand speech, but because of a simple, human story. Practical ways to practice everyday storytelling. Here's how to begin. A listen for story openings in conversations, moments of emotion, challenge, or joy. A prepare 2 or 3 short personal stories tied to universal emotions like fear, hope, or kindness. A practice flowing into stories with natural transitions. A watch for the listener's eyes. When they lean in, when they soften, you'll know you've connected. Start small. Start real. Let your life become a living story that ripples outward. Chapter 12, Storytelling for Influence, Moving Without Manipulating. When most people hear the word influence, they think of manipulation, persuasion, control. But true influence is none of these things. True influence is not about bending people to your will. It's about awakening something inside them they already recognize but may have forgotten. You may be wondering, how can storytelling create that kind of influence? The answer is simple. By moving hearts, not just minds. Let's step into this power, carefully, respectfully, and beautifully. The purpose of influence. Let's pause for a moment. Influence at its highest form is service. It is offering new perspectives. It is lighting a path others may choose to walk, freely, consciously, willingly. When you influence with integrity, you never coerce. You never pressure. You never shame. You invite. You inspire. You lead by example. And storytelling is the bridge that makes that possible. Why storytelling is the ultimate tool of influence. Stories bypass rational defenses. They slip beneath skepticism. They unlock imagination. Where facts often trigger argument, stories trigger reflection. Where logic can harden hearts, stories can soften them. The brain processes storytelling experiences almost identically to real experiences. When you tell a story, you are not just sharing information. You are creating experience. And experience is the most powerful form of persuasion. The ethics of story-driven influence. You may be wondering, where is the line between ethical influence and manipulation? The answer lies in your intention. Ask yourself, am I seeking to empower the listener? Am I respecting their freedom to choose? Am I offering light, not forcing direction? Manipulation takes away choice. True storytelling influence expands it. When your heart is clean. When your message is offered, not imposed. You stand in the sacred place where transformation happens by invitation, not force. Stories that lead without pushing. Instead of saying, "You should believe this," a storyteller says, "Here's what I lived, and what it taught me." Instead of shouting answers, a storyteller shares the questions that changed their life. Instead of controlling the listener's path, a storyteller lights many possible paths and lets the listener choose their own. The power of storytelling is not in domination. It's in awakening. When you awaken curiosity, courage, hope, you have influenced something far deeper than behavior. You have influenced belief. A story that inspired change. Let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel was a youth counselor working with teenagers who had lost hope. Lectures didn't work. Rules didn't reach them. Threats only pushed them further away. So Daniel stopped teaching and started telling stories. Stories about his own mistakes. Stories about nights he slept in his car, feeling worthless. Stories about moments when one person's kindness saved him. He never said, "You have to change." He simply said, "I've been there. Here's what helped me." And the teenagers listened. Not because they were forced, but because they saw themselves in him. They found new choices by walking alongside his story. That is true influence. That is leadership through humanity. Practical ways to influence through storytelling. Here's how you can practice. A share from personal experience, not abstract advice. A focus on universal emotions, fear, hope, love, loss. Or allow vulnerability. Let your struggles teach, not just your victories. I offer lessons as possibilities, not commands. I respect the listener's freedom to draw their own conclusions. Influence built on respect lasts. Influence built on force crumbles. When you offer your story with open hands, people are far more likely to open their hearts. Before we move on, let's pause for a moment. If you're beginning to realize that your stories carry a power you never fully claimed before, if you're feeling the deep responsibility and beauty of influencing through truth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. We are building a world where stories uplift, not control. Your voice is part of that rising. Now, let's continue. The deep secret. Transformation is an inside job. Ultimately, no story forces transformation. You cannot make someone change. You cannot make someone see. But what you can do is open a door, light a torch, plant a seed, and trust that, in the right season, change will come from within. Your job as a storyteller is not to conquer. It is to invite. It is to leave behind invitations that echo long after your words are gone. Chapter 13. Healing through stories, rewriting the past. There is a hidden truth about storytelling. It doesn't just connect us to others. It connects us back to ourselves. Storytelling has the power to heal, to mend broken places, to shine light into the dark corners we thought would never be seen. You may be wondering, how can telling a story change what has already happened? The answer is simple, but profound. You cannot change the past, but you can change the meaning you give it. And meaning is everything. The stories we tell ourselves. Let's pause for a moment. Every one of us carries an invisible library, a collection of stories about who we are, stories about our worth, our failures, our hopes, our fears. Some of these stories empower us. Some of these stories imprison us. The stories we tell ourselves shape how much love we allow, how much risk we take, how deeply we dream. And the most dangerous stories are the ones we don't even realize we're telling. How stories shape identity. Psychologists call this narrative identity. It's the internal autobiography we build over time, pieced together from memories, experiences, and emotions. But here's the hidden truth. Memory is not a photograph. It's a story. Every time we remember something, we are not just replaying it. We are reinterpreting it. We are telling ourselves what it means. Which means we have the power to heal old wounds by telling new stories. Not by lying. Not by pretending the pain didn't happen. But by giving the pain a new, redemptive place in our story. Healing happens through meaning. You may be wondering, how does this work? Pain that feels random, meaningless, cruel, stays open. Pain that finds meaning begins to heal. When you find meaning in your suffering, you transform it from something that happened to you into something that happened through you. It becomes part of your strength, part of your compassion, part of your wisdom. Storytelling is the tool that allows you to reclaim your meaning. A story that healed a heart. Let me tell you about Liana. Liana grew up feeling invisible, overlooked by her family, ignored by her teachers, dismissed by her friends. 4 years, she carried the silent story. I don't matter. And because she believed that story, she lived it. She dimmed her voice. She shrank her dreams. She settled for less. One day, through a healing workshop, she was asked to retell her life story, but this time, from the perspective of her inner warrior. Slowly, Liana found a new narrative. Instead of I don't matter, she saw the ways she had fought to survive, the quiet strength she built in solitude, the compassion she carried for others who felt unseen. Her past didn't change, but her meaning did, and that meaning changed everything. Liana began speaking up. She pursued dreams she once believed were not for her. She became a mentor for others walking the path she knew too well. All because she learned to tell her story differently. How to rewrite your own story. Here's how you can begin the healing process through storytelling. Or identify a painful story you often tell yourself. Ask, what meaning have I given this story? Ask, is there a deeper, truer meaning I can claim? Rewrite the story, honoring the pain but focusing on growth, strength, wisdom. You're not erasing what happened. You're reclaiming its meaning. You're taking the pen back into your own hands. Healing others through your stories. When you share your healing stories with others, you do something miraculous. You remind them they are not alone. You show them that healing is possible. You offer them a map through their own shadows. Healing through storytelling is not about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about standing in your scars and saying, you can survive too. When you speak from your healed places, you light lanterns in the dark for others to follow. Practical healing storytelling exercise. Here's a simple but powerful practice. Choose a painful memory. Write it first the way your wounded self sees it. Then write it again, from the perspective of your strongest, wisest self. Focus on the meaning, the strength, the survival. Read both versions out loud. Feel the shift. Feel the healing begin. Over time, the stronger story will become your truth. Chapter 14. Becoming a story magnet. Living stories worth sharing. Some people seem to live lives made of stories. Every conversation with them feels like a window into another world. Every moment they share feels rich, vivid, unforgettable. You may be wondering, were they just born with better stories? Luckier experiences? More exciting lives? The truth is much simpler. They live differently. They live awake. And you can too. You don't have to wait for dramatic events to be a great storyteller. You just have to see your life through a different lens. You have to become a magnet for meaning. Let's walk into this new way of living. Why living awake creates stories. Let's pause for a moment. Every single day, life offers you raw material for stories. Moments of beauty, moments of pain, moments of connection, moments of discovery. But most people miss them. Not because they're blind. Because they're distracted. rushing, numbing, checking out. When you live awake, truly awake, you start seeing the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary. You start gathering the invisible moments most people walk past. And those moments become the lifeblood of your storytelling. The habits of story magnets. You may be wondering, how do I start living in a way that naturally creates stories? Story magnets share 3 key habits: a curiosity, presence, a reflection. Let's explore each one. Curiosity, asking the deeper questions. Curiosity means living in wonder. It means asking, what's the story behind this moment? What unseen things are happening here? What emotion is hidden just beneath the surface? Curiosity pulls you deeper into experiences. It helps you notice what others miss. It turns even small encounters into seeds of powerful stories. When you live with curiosity, the world becomes a living storybook waiting to be read. Presence, being fully where you are. Presence is about slowing down, breathing deeper, tasting the moment you're living. When you are truly present, you notice the way the sunlight falls across an empty bench. You hear the hesitation in a friend's voice before they say they're fine. You feel the electricity of unsaid words hanging in the air. Presence lets you feel life as it happens. And feeling is what makes stories unforgettable. Reflection, mining meaning from experience. Every experience, no matter how small, carries potential meaning. But meaning doesn't scream for attention. It whispers. You find it by reflecting. Reflection means asking yourself after a moment passes, what did I feel? What did I learn? What deeper truth lived inside that experience? Reflection turns random events into treasures. It transforms life from a blur into a mosaic. And the more you reflect, the more you live as a collector of meaning. A story magnet in action. Let me tell you about Sophia. Sophia wasn't a world traveler. She didn't have a glamorous job. She didn't survive epic tragedies. But her friends often said, talking to you feels like reading a beautiful book. Why? Because Sophia lived awake. She noticed the way an old man fed birds in the park, and how a single tear slipped down his cheek. She noticed how a child clutched a crumpled drawing like it was the most valuable thing on earth. She paid attention. And because she paid attention, her life overflowed with stories most people never even saw. Sophia wasn't lucky. She was present. She was curious. She reflected. And that made all the difference. Your life is already rich enough to fill books. You just have to notice it. Now, let's keep moving forward. Practical ways to become a story magnet. Here's how you can start today. Keep a story journal. Write down one meaningful moment you noticed each day. Practice asking deeper questions about people and places. Slow down at least once a day. Breathe, look, listen deeply. Reflect weekly on what lessons and emotions stood out to you. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you will realize life was never boring. You were just rushing past the miracles. Chapter 15. Mastery. When storytelling becomes who you are. There is a moment in every true journey. A moment when the practice fades. The struggle softens. The technique dissolves. And something deeper takes its place. You are no longer trying to tell stories. You are living them. You may be wondering, what does it mean for storytelling to become who you are? It means you no longer wear it like a mask. You embody it. You breathe it. You move through the world as a creator of connection. Storytelling becomes not just a skill. It becomes a way of being. Let's step into this final transformation together. The journey of mastery. Let's pause for a moment. Mastery is not about reaching a finish line. It's not about perfect delivery. It's not about flawless performances. Mastery is about becoming so aligned with the heart of storytelling that it flows from you naturally, without force, without fear, without self-consciousness. You tell stories because it's who you are. You see stories because it's how you live. The line between story and life disappears, and what remains is pure presence. The signs you are becoming a true storyteller. You may be closer than you realize. Here are the signs. You see meaning where others see routine. You listen more deeply than you speak. You find yourself moved by small, ordinary moments. You trust silence as much as speech. You share stories to connect, not to impress. You feel more alive, more awake, more human. Mastery is not about speaking louder. It's about feeling deeper and sharing from that depth. Storytelling as a form of love. At its highest form, storytelling is an act of love. It says, I see you. You are not alone. Your emotions matter. Your journey matters. When you share your truth, you give others permission to share theirs. When you walk naked through your memories, you light the path for others to shed their shame. When you offer stories not to dominate, but to connect, you become a bridge. You become a healer, a mirror, a guide. Not because you know everything, but because you are willing to be real. Living a story worth telling. You may be wondering, how do I continue growing once storytelling becomes natural? The answer is simple. Live a story worth telling. Live with courage. Live with openness. Live with wonder. Take risks. Fall down. Get back up. Chase the dreams that scare you. Love the people who challenge you. Stand for the things that matter even when it costs you. When you live bravely, you gather stories without even trying. Your life becomes the story, and your storytelling becomes simply the act of living out loud. A life that speaks for itself. Let me tell you about Elena. Elena was not famous. She didn't have a big platform. She didn't give keynote speeches. But when people spoke about her, they spoke with tears in their eyes. Because Elena lived her life like a story of grace. She listened without judgment. She forgave without keeping score. She laughed loudly. She wept openly. She loved fiercely. And because she lived so fully, every conversation with her felt like stepping into a sacred story. Elena didn't need to tell stories. She was the story. And that is true mastery. Before we close, let's pause for a moment. If you're feeling the truth stirring inside you, that you were made not just to tell stories, but to live a life of meaning, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. You are part of a lineage of storytellers that stretches back through time. A living flame passed from voice to voice, heart to heart. Your flame matters. Now, let's finish this journey together. Living as a storyteller every day. Here's how to continue deepening your mastery. Wake up every day asking, what story will I live today? Listen with your whole heart to the stories unfolding around you. Share your truth even when it trembles. Honor the stories of others as sacred. Find beauty even in the broken places. Mastery is not a destination. It's a way of walking through the world. A way of breathing. A way of loving. A way of seeing. And every day you choose to walk that way, you keep becoming more of the storyteller you were always meant to be. Final reflection. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your life, messy, beautiful, unfinished, is already enough. You don't have to wait until you are perfect to tell your story. You don't have to wait until you have all the answers. You are ready now. The world needs your voice. It needs your perspective. It needs the unique, unrepeatable gift that only you can give. So go out there. Speak. Share. Connect. Heal. Transform. Live your story boldly. And let the echoes of your truth ripple farther than you will ever know.